My name is Meg Tuohey. Together we'll gather wisdom from a wide range of voices, thought leaders and seekers just like you. Through individual stories, we'll explore multiple categories of wisdom and uncover how the stripes of our experiences, both joyful and challenging and all that lies in between, intertwine to create a rich tapestry of life. So whether you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. This is Wisdom Stripes. So today on Wisdom Stripes, we're honored to welcome Tanya C. Oliver, a powerhouse of faith, resilience, and alignment. Tanya's journey is anchored by her unwavering connection to God, which has guided her through life's obstacles and empowered her to stay true to herself. As the founder of the Ultimate Achiever Academy, Tanya is deeply committed to helping others unlock their potential, aligning personal growth with a greater sense of purpose. Her approach is centered on staying connected to her beliefs and investing consistently in self-alignment, making her path a powerful example of how spiritual and personal development go hand in hand. Tanya's story is one of conviction and courage, offering us insights into overcoming challenges through faith, finding strength within, and staying grounded in one's values. Let's dive into her inspiring journey and the wisdom she's gained along the way. Welcome to Wisdom Stripes, where we are your no-nonsense, fierce fairy godmothers, turning pain and confusion into clarity and confidence. Tanya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Meg, for having me.
I am really excited about today's conversation, our interview. And Tanya, we always start with the same question for our guests. What wisdom would you like our listeners to come away with today?
That you're a human being before your role, task, and your responsibility. We have to remember that all things are an extension of self.
I already want to start there. Let's slow that down. You are a human being before your role, task,
and
responsibilities, and all things are an extension from there. Did I?
All things are an extension of you. So we attract what we are energetically vibrational matches to. Even the things that we can't understand as to like why or the people that we're attracting, there's something in shadow work where this is, we are the dark and we are the light, but we decide which version that we're showing up as every single day. And it's like a muscle. So am I putting in my daily repetitions? Am I showing up for the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, so that I can show up as the highest expression of myself? As entrepreneurs, we delegate, we are taught to delegate, and we forget that these are the things that can never be delegated. And it's about taking ownership and personal responsibility of that and knowing that those are the things that we must be selfish in.
There is so much there. If you are somebody who is listening to this idea for the first or the second or the third time, what do you think is the one thing, if you were to pull it out, cannot be taken from you?
I mean, your connection to God, your connection to a higher power, connection to, if you're somebody who's a visionary, as somebody who is has a desire to be a leader, somebody who has a desire to, whether you're just, people say like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, or I'm just a stay-at-home dad, or I'm just a this, I'm just a that. Like, own it, be the best in it. And if you think about your sport or your career as a sport, so you're an athlete before you're playing a sport. And in order to be the best athlete or to own your position on the team, whether it being your family team, your business team, you being on a team, you being a part of a company that has a greater purpose and a mission, there's roles, tasks, and responsibilities that you have to own. So it really comes down to like this is my reputation. Like, am I proud of it? Am I proud of how I'm showing up? Do I really want to like operate in my full potential?
It's interesting that I use the word taken from. And when I am listening, what can be taken from you? When I'm listening to your sense of power, your sense of autonomy and your agency, that comes from you in quiet, calm, strong, sure waves. And I think that might be why I use that phrase. because I'm very curious for those of the listeners that have yet to find their sense of stability, their sense of agency, autonomy, and leadership, where perhaps it feels as though things can be taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you start, if that's been your experience, to grow into this sense of ownership where it comes so naturally to you? That's not everybody's starting point.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my guess is lots of people feel like, I don't know how to have that level, or I have a level and I'd like to move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Could we start by talking in those spaces?
I love this, yes, because I was such a hot mess. And there's been so many segments. I feel like God gives everybody their lane, and human performance is my lane. And I've always been fascinated with, how do I become this person, but how do I embody this strong, powerful woman? How do I embody the wholeness of me operating in my full potential at peak performance, regardless of my circumstances and regardless of what life has given me or thrown at me? And to answer your question, you got to start with taking care of your body. And it's the simplest place for people to start, but it's also can be the most challenging, with the guilt and the emotions and the energy. But when you're taking care of your body, what I found is that it allows the mental and the emotional turbulence to quiet so you can have more clarity. And then it allows you to have the tools and to start to be like relentless with what it is. And you're going to receive the right teachers, the right information, whether you guys are listening to this podcast. These are all like your cues, your signs. And then from there, you start to learn things on how to manage your emotions, like different tools like EFT, where you're tapping through the meridian points, things like belief work through theta healing, which you're getting into a theta brainwave, and you can like learn the subconscious blocks that are blocking your blessings. The physical, the exercise is another tool. In a moment you go into, whether it being a walk or a gym, or you go dancing, I salsa dance, like whatever you're doing, or rollerblading. I love rollerblading too. You go in however you are, yoga, and you leave as a better version of yourself. So you also, as you're doing the work, you're finding ecosystems and environments that everybody goes as they are, but everybody leaves a better version from what they are. And I always say the physical, learning to take care of the physical, it allows you to navigate through the emotional and the mental turbulence a lot smoother. And then it also will help you tap into your spirituality with ease through your meditation practices. Um, Journaling practices can be very spiritually connected because it allows you to slow things down so you can have greater self awareness. And breath work, breathing exercises. I mean, there's so many different avenues to go in. I would say start as like an adventurer. Think of it as an adventure, and you're exploring these avenues to receive knowledge of which one is in the greatest alignment for me in this season of my life with the level I'm most receptive.
So I want to merge two ideas together, and then let's go on a journey with this. So in the cognitive triangle, which is the way in which we think something, then we have a feeling about it, and a feeling is a release in our body that our brain interprets and then says that's sadness, that's pain, that's anger, that's jealousy, that's joy. It goes thinking, feeling, and then action. And action is where the body, I think, comes into play, and perhaps where the feelings are as well. And of course, the body houses the brain. So the body is a big part of our perception of life. So I want to start with holding that idea. Then I want to add in what appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm learning you right now, is your understanding of the body's wisdom. So we can look at the work of like Bessel van der Kolk, where the body keeps the score. It remembers everything that's ever happened to it. Even if your beautiful brain can't retrieve the memory, it's stored in that cellular place. I feel like we might be talking today about body wisdom. And I wonder whether body wisdom is something that you feel like is one of your special interest areas or your mastery spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, my first career was in personal training and nutrition, and I struggled tremendously with the body. I grew up an athlete. I played 9 years of travel ice hockey, very competitive. There was no place for women to go. So I was like, all right, I got to figure out what else I'm going to do for my life. Got into physical therapy, but I realized I wanted to get into prevention. I've always been into preventional work.
Mhm.
And then I decided to transition, when you're setting goals, transition to bikini competitions.
Mm.
And from there, I developed severe binge eating disorder, gained 60 pounds, and pursued a career in personal training at the same time. So there was that interest and passion, but at the same time, I had a lot of unraveling, right?
Mm.
Like, who do I need to become, but what do I need to overcome?
Mm.
Because it wasn't about the food, it was about me numbing the pain. Because at that time, I had lost my family
Mm.
from my dad. Had built a very successful, I grew up privileged, so he built a very successful construction industry. We lost everything right after I got out of college. And not only did we lose the materialistic, but we also lost each other through addiction and stuff like that. And so I had to build the new. And with that, my food was a way of how food and alcohol and sleeping around was my way of processing my pain because it was a tool. And so,
Mm.
as complicated as people talk about addiction, it's also a simple thing of finding other things to help you process and navigate through your pain. And the easiest place to start with was all the overwhelming trauma, which you're talking about cellular memory, cellular impressions, but there's also cellular memory release with different tools and modalities and yoga and all these other different forms I had to find of what worked with me in that season of my life, of what I was most receptive with the overwhelming amount of trauma that had hit all at once.
Yeah.
And so physical is something we can do right away. We can touch it, feel it, we can experience it. When we're doing other tools and modalities, sometimes that takes a lot longer to feel in that moment of time.
That's true. So the body is a vessel we live in.
Mhm.
And often when we have experienced trauma or intense emotions, we escape the body. We do things called disassociating, or we go and visit the outer ethers in spaces that are like a hyper focus, or just even going into flow can escape the body, or
Mhm.
perhaps using spirituality as a way to go and connect into a safer place when the body doesn't feel safe anymore. And what I think the wisdom might be here is rebuilding that sense of safety in your body is that one of the core things about coming home to yourself
Mhm.
and therefore finding your, not finding, remembering your power
Mhm.
and remembering who you are and how you're meant to live this life. I wonder, could you talk a little bit about what it's like to live in an embodied way? How do you know when you're at peace and at home in your body?
Mm. Well, if you're talking about even energy systems where you're tapping more, there's for people to understand, I like to take the complex and make it so simple. But we have four pillars of being a human being. There's so many avenues to go and branch off within each pillar. But to make it simple, we've got the physical realm, we've got the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual.
Mm.
And those require daily practice.
Mm.
When we're talking about the body is the subconscious. So whatever you want to say, whatever words are words, but it comes down to the subconscious. It's a programming. 95% of our day is run through habitual programming. That means when you have different tools and modalities, if you change your mind on how you want to live and how you want to show up, regardless of what where you've been up until this moment of time, you listening to the podcast, our conversation, you can make a conscious decision to change your mind and have clarity on what you want and who you want to become. And then from there, reverse engineer the process
Mm.
and go through the different levels and the steps. Just like maybe for the first time, if you're learning how to train your body, you have to learn from like the very, very beginning, the foundational
Mm.
framework. And when you're talking about feeling more at home in your body, and the embodiment of stepping into your power, that is the root chakra, which is about safety. And when it's off balance, there does become addictional stuff going on. I am a huge advocate in yoga. I've got 2 yoga teacher trainings, breathing, breath work. I love walking. Treat it like a journey. And almost like I think we can all go back into dating. So if you're going through dating and, just because you had a really bad experience on one date, it doesn't mean like you're not going to go on another date. And the best place to start is to start to treat that as like you're dating yourself and you're getting to know who you are. And during the dating process, you're asking all these questions and you're so curious versus like judging. Well, hopefully you guys aren't judging, right? We judge ourselves so hard sometimes, especially depending on, the upbringing. And so you're treating it as like this, like, okay, I'm going to go on a date here. I'm going to try this out. Same thing with exercise. I'm going to try this. No, it's not a good fit. I'm going to try this. Oh, it's not a good fit. It's even though something's hard. So like when I first started to learn how to salsa dance, I'm a gringa. I confuse people all the time. They're like, "Oh, do you start speaking Spanish?" I'm like, "Nope." Just they're like, "You dance like a Latina." I was like, I had to go through training. I took classes, and it took me 1 year to figure out for my body to coordinate to hear there's a beat where you're either going to step on a 2 or you step on a 1. So when you're dancing with your partner, you flow. And it almost becomes like the shadow dance where the woman has to be divinely strong, but flexible and allowing the male to lead. And the male has to be confident in his lead, but he also has to be aware of the environment. So he's protecting the feminine energy. And so we could talk about feminine, masculine energy with that analogy all day long. But when I first started learning to dance, I was so frustrated. I wanted to quit so many times, not because I didn't love it, because I wasn't good at it and I didn't get it. And I didn't get it on somebody else's timeline. And so, but because I was so in love with it and because it brought me so much joy, there's this duality and confliction of the mind, but there's still an interest and a passion. And because I kept going after about a year, it clicked. And I like to explain that as the journey of anything that is when you're embodying something. I think people explain it like, oh, it just magically happened, it's divinely aligned, and everything is easy. When you're building a new version of yourself and you're building a new version of your life, and you have years of building cellular impressions or cellular memory or those things that you're wanting to release because it's not in alignment to you, and you're carrying things from past or generational stuff, or you're taking on your mom's stuff, you're taking on your dad's things, especially if you're somebody who is hypersensitive to energy and you haven't yet figured out how to kind of like an X-Men, like master your energy. Because I explain it like that. You might be a little bit out of control, a little bit self-destructive, but you're powerful. So when you learn to practice and practice and practice and practice, then you embody the energy and you learn how to control it and maneuver it, and like knowing when to use it and having that discernment and wisdom. But everything requires daily repetitions and practices, and the faster you're going to get there is the more consistent you are with it. So it comes down to consistency thing.
There's a word we use in my coaching practice in my worlds, which is called MRW, and it's a word called attunement. And attunement is self and then others. We use it in both ways. But what it feels like is, if we're talking relationship with body, which is where your physical sense of strength or power is also located. It's located in other ways and shapes and forms as well, but we're talking in the body for this particular moment. I am really curious about the level of attunement you have to your body. I heard you say, I like to think about dating my body, myself. That's really beautiful, but I feel like you're beyond dating. I feel like you're in a long-term, I think it's even like a long-term marriage now. That's what it sounds like. So I can hear a level of mastery, of attunement in your physicality. And I feel like that is a really interesting conversation. Could you tell us maybe about what it feels like to be in that masterful attunement space with your body?
I would explain it. I've never been asked this before, so I was like, I know how to teach it, but I've never been asked this. So it feels really good. It feels like freedom. And here's the thing, it's like a radio station, I would say too. Just because there has to be, like, if we're talking about frequency, because now I know I could speak our language here. If we're talking about frequency, have you ever listened to a song before?
Mhm.
It's almost like an Adele song. It's like the alignment with the lyrics, it just like awakens your heart.
Yes.
When you know you're not showing up for what you said you were going to do, it almost becomes like a heartache.
Mm.
I have a light system, and this is how I go. Just because you know doesn't always mean that you do. And as entrepreneurs, we can get so much in our head that we forget to have that mind heart coherence. But as women, because Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about a lot of the men that are leading the industries, which are phenomenal men, talk about a lot about the heart mind coherence. But the women, when women start to speak, like when I started getting into theta healing, she talks about the womb, which is creation. So as women, we have that third aspect that men don't have. And we, that creative and that playfulness. So it's knowing, like, what is your soul food? What is your mind fuel? And then what is your womb fuel?
Ooh, we're going to slow down here. So your attunement, when you drop into your body, you're feeling into it in multiple spaces. Is it just the three, or is there more than that?
I'll give an example because I did this recently. If I'm really much in my head and I've got a lot of projects going on, and you're working with so many different energies and so many different personalities at so many different levels of understanding energy psychology and how things work. And part of leadership is you have to help meet people with where they're at and help them navigate through getting to the bigger mission and purpose of what you're wanting to achieve. So if I'm very much in my head and I need to connect more to my heart and I'm doing a strength training exercise, I know that I need to focus a lot more on balancing exercises because it connects me back to my breath. So all of these things that we're doing is still to bring you back to one core thing, which is the breath, which is your life force. And when you can connect back to the breath and you slow the breath down, you can get anchored back into your heart.
Mm.
And so the rate at which you're breathing allows you to connect back to the heart, which allows you to be back into the present moment awareness, which is all we have. But we are the embodiment of our past, our present, and our future.
Hey there, Meg Tuohey here with a quick and exciting announcement. As a psychologist, coach, and founder of the Wisdom Lab, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals break free from the vicious cycles holding them back and tap into their infinite inner wisdom. If you're tired of feeling unheard, unseen, and stuck in the same old struggles, the Wisdom Lab is the breakthrough you've been yearning for. This on-demand program guides you through a powerful process to shatter emotional barriers, overcome deep-rooted blocks, and experience the profound transformation you deserve. In just 4 hours, you'll gain the tools and insights to revolutionize your life from the inside out. Want to learn more? Click or tap the link in the show notes for all the details. Okay, now back to the episode. In season 1, episode 1 of Wisdom Stripes, I interviewed somebody called Lauren Fox, who was a beautiful interview. And she is a breathwork practitioner, and she describes that aspect of breathwork being one of the things that helped her save her own life, I guess. She probably didn't say that specifically. That's my read on it, where she had experiences of being sex trafficked, where she also experienced addiction and also other complex, hard things. And breath work, the physicality of being able to release that trauma, is one of the hallmarks of her journey. Would you explain to us how that works, or why, from your mastery perspective, you can see how she would have been drawn to that.
Absolutely. This goes back into understanding the season that you're in, whether in every trauma's to not be compared. So if anybody's watching and you're like, wow, I have nothing to complain about, you're we pray that nobody ever has to go through that extreme of anything, but it's also not to be compared. And so like understand that too. But the breath is our life force and our pulse. And I actually have I worked with one of the pioneers of a liberation breath work, Sandra Ray, like way back when I was trying to figure out how to overcome my own like self-sabotage and addictions. And the best way I can describe it, because we all have our own special gifts, and the more you practice, the more you start to really get to understand and embody and embrace them. But I would say it is like there's like a gray fog. You know, fog. You guys have fogs over?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I've never been there. It's actually on my list.
Australia.
Yes, I never
Come on
been to
down.
Australia. So I would describe it as like it's a really foggy day. And when you're breathing, the more that you connect to the breath, you tap into this blissful state of an energy. And the fog, like, it's almost like you get to do this, but with your life.
Mm.
And then you have this, like, all the noise, all of the pulling, all the distraction, and it's a clear day.
Mm.
That's how I would describe breath work. Is it's like the heaviness of the fog. You can't
Mm.
see anything. It starts to weigh heavy on you. You can't even see like above, like in front, or like I'm here in Miami, we're here in Florida, but it's like hurricane season. Like you got to put on your hazard net lights. You can't even see, like, even if a car's totally in front of you, you got to put those hazard lights, or you got to pull over. But when you breathe, like you really breathe, and then you can start to feel the breath inside of your cells. Because I've gone from completely disconnected to now completely connected.
Mm.
And that's one of my goal words every single day. It's an intrinsic goal word, is to be connected to God every single day. And the breath is God. It is your connection to God. So if you are on the journey of, how to feel this thing called spirituality or have a relationship with God, start with your breath. Start to learn to connect to the breath. And I was listening to an Abraham Hicks. I like to listen to them in the morning. I don't know if you've ever heard of Abraham Hicks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all about law of attraction. And she says, if you're going to get addicted to anything, get addicted to the breath. And the breath will set you free.
And that, of course, resides in this human suit that we all have in order to be living in this one life.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, there is an access point, and we can't go very long without literally breathing.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding, though, is most people breathe really shallowly,
Mm-hmm.
so it sort of sits right up high in their chest. And I will often notice that I'm talking from here, and then I'll be like, push out my stomach and let the breath drop right down.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ways that you can become aware of or attuned to your breath when you notice that perhaps you're getting clenched
Mm-hmm.
fingers or tightness in your shoulders, and your shoulders are rising up to your beautiful brain in your head, and your back is kind of holding? How do you drop your breath? And is it correct to drop your breath, or is there a different way that you do it?
Mm-hmm. I love how aware you are. Is that I'm very much about the physical. Like I connect the fastest through the physical, especially to the metaphysical or to spiritual. And some people are more spiritual and they need to come back to the physical. So it just really depends. I feel like the physical grounds us. So I love things like touching my heart or touching my stomach,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Do you,
actively like commanding, because a command is a co-creation. A demand is like more of like that dictatorship, but a command is a co-creation. So you're co-creating with your body. You're guiding your body on what you want it to do. That's why even like when I did personal training, I would actively like touch the muscle to communicate. And I think that's why I also resonated a lot with EFT work, because it helps you just regulate the nervous system. But most importantly, it's pattern disruption. And that's why people do like cold plunges or this and that. But listen, don't be creating trauma on top of trauma. Cold plunges for me are traumatic.
Yeah.
I like warm baths.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
So,
is attunement,
yes. Oh,
right?
I love that.
Because
That attunement.
sometimes
Mhm.
the towards move, the thing that's going to move you towards your outcome,
Mhm.
is an ice bath. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's an away move because it shocks you in a way that's actually damaging. So, discernment, attunement is about what is my next thing that moves me towards the
Mhm.
life that I want,
Yeah.
towards a sense of feeling embodied, because we're talking embody,
Mhm.
and that sense of being able to access my innate sense of leadership, of power,
Yeah.
of the ability to be able to move forward and have agency and leadership.
Mhm.
So ice baths are great for some people. They really are. Saunas are great for some people.
Mhm.
Stretching are great for some people.
Yeah.
But not all the things that you see, particularly as you're scrolling through your social media,
Yeah.
not all the things that work for other people will work for your beautiful
Yeah.
body. And I feel like that is okay. And I think we might get a bit lost in trying to do all the right things. But actually, I think there's a wisdom in that attunement. And I do believe you understand more deeply the language of how your body communicates to you.
Mhm.
So, we talked a little bit before about your relationship with food.
Mhm.
Could you describe your relationship with food now in terms of how you know what your body needs in order for it to feel like it's got what it needs?
Mhm. I love food. I really do.
Mm, me too.
As you're talking, I do want to bring this up because I think I get asked this question a lot, depending on how the conversations get navigated. But in the process of change, there's that duality, especially if there's attachment stuff going on.
Mm.
And something that is pleasurable is also destructive.
Yeah.
So when you're going through, I do believe it happens in layers. Like my journey has happened in a consciously aware 20-year journey.
Mm.
I always say, like, the first 20 years I was living blindly. And then the last 20 years I've had to reparent from the ground up
Mhm.
as it happens. So when you're describing it, I think it's important for people to understand that your emotions aren't reliable,
Mm.
but they are a navigational system at the same time. So in moments where you don't want to wake up and go and exercise, you have to remember not always necessarily the journey, but how to bring fun into the journey
Mm.
because you're going to do it anyway. And
Mhm.
you have to create that discipline
Mm.
because discipline is so important in order to get you freedom.
Mm.
And I don't think we talk a lot about that, especially in the metaphysical space or when we're having those metaphysical conversations or the attunement, because you're like, but it doesn't feel good. You have to focus on when you cross the bridge, not in the moment of that, because in the moment that you're in is in a stuck cycle that doesn't feel good. And so we got to get you out of that cycle. In order to get you out of that cycle, you're going to do things, even like liberation breath work. It's not blissful, it's ugly, actually.
You've got to cross the bridge though, and that's the toward move.
Yeah.
So I have a clinician on my team. Her name is Christina, and she will say, sometimes I go to have a slice of chocolate cake, and that's a toward move. That's something that feels good. I might be sharing a celebration with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I have this sense that it is exactly what I need. And sometimes I go to have a slice of chocolate cake and it's an away move. It's moving me away from what my goals or my outcomes are. And it's not something that is actually nourishing me from sharing it in a celebration or sharing it for just pure joy for myself. It's like knocking, wrong word. It's like blocking pain or it's numbing
I say
or
blocking my blessings.
blocking your
Yeah.
blessings. And so being able to discern and attune about what your body needs. And sometimes your body's like, I'm tired. I'm just going to stay here and scroll on the couch today. And sometimes that's a towards move.
And sometimes that's a bad habit.
And sometimes that's an away move.
Yeah.
That's not crossing any bridge. There's an
No.
avoidance in there.
Avoidance behavior.
So what we're looking at is the wisdom to know
Mhm.
the difference between the two things.
As you're speaking, and I always have like these little thought, I call them little thought bubbles, and I was
Mm.
like, okay, that I want to tune in on this one. This year, my goal is to start reading the Bible. And what you're talking about reminds me of John. And it's another tool, right? So we have all these different tools. And in John, they're talking about spiritual thirst and hunger. So when you're eating something, since we're on the topic of food and relationship,
Mm.
I was searching for something in food that and alcohol that would never fulfill that part of my spiritual starvation.
Let's pause a second. Let's say that sentence again.
Mhm.
That took my breath away. Would you mind saying it again for us?
Sure, but I channeled it, so let's see.
Let's see what happens.
When I was searching through food and alcohol, it was never satisfying. So when you're looking for things, when you eat a really good meal and you're not satisfied because it has nothing to do with food. It has everything to do with a spiritual hunger that needs to be met only through something that can fulfill it through a spiritual realm, not through food, not through alcohol, not through that relationship, not calling that ex, not, doing XYZ, because it's not just food. It's people, places, and things that we seek things outside of ourselves to fulfill a spiritual need that is starving.
That is that. Let's do some wisdom here, my friend. So that calling, we often think, I find that to be the most confusing and painful place for the humans. And I count myself as a human. Yes. So
Me too.
we find ourselves in those spaces. That is a normal human experience. If you have that experience, that is not that, because it's nothing, you're not the only one. You cannot get through life without having those experiences, no matter how happy you are, no matter how much you've built this beautiful life. The human condition has a range of emotions, and that is the human suit. So when we have those opportunities for noticing some emptiness, or noticing some vacancy, or noticing some pain or some confusion, that is, I often think, the next kind of hurdle or the next iteration of life that we can use as fuel to grow into the next version of self.
Yeah.
But we have to, I don't like but, and we have to befriend the void.
I love that. I say that word all the time, befriend.
Befriend the void.
Yeah.
Befriend the body we were talking about before.
It's still you. Befriend yourself. It's
a friend.
mm-hmm.
So what do you know about befriending?
When I was ready and seeking and relentless, don't take no for an answer. Be relentless. If there's something inside of you that knows there's an answer to it, just keep seeking. And because I was relentless, I came across a coach that was willing and capable to support me. When you're seeking out coaches, you have to find people that are not only willing, but that are capable, especially when you have a very strong personality and you're reckless. I watch like the animal rescue stuff, and there's this one guy named Dog Daddy.
I don't know Dog Daddy.
He's so cool. Well, I don't know him, but what he's doing is cool, where he showcases these wounded dogs that are on the verge of being put down. So you're literally putting yourself down through all these destructive behaviors. And he is like the last hope.
Oh.
And he trains them, and all of a sudden now they can be around people without attacking them. It can be around their owner. They could be around other people without being so out of control. And now, or when you take a dog and they're in a wolf pack, and they start to act right when they're around the right environment. And so I was relentless, and I knew that I had the desire to embody greatness. I knew that I always wanted to be a leader. I knew that I was meant to do something powerful. And I think any coach that is relentless in what they do and so passionate about it is they're seeking answers for even themselves.
Of course they are.
That's how I created what I did. I was like, why is this not with this? And why are people not talking about this? And to go seek things out from so many different areas. So I found a coach that was willing and capable, and I learned shadow work. And that's what I learned about the dark traits. But when I befriended them, because they're always going to be there, you can't unlearn what the color red looks like. You just know it exists, and maybe red's not your favorite flavor. So you are like, I want to look at blue now. So anytime red appears, you redirect it. And that's the best way I could describe that. And then it's like, there's a story of two wolves. Have you heard of the story of two wolves?
Wolves are everywhere for me at the moment.
Okay.
So please tell me.
Well, this is a pleasant story.
No, as in people keep bringing me stories of
Really?
wolves. You would be
Wow.
the third person in as many days.
That's a sign. That's
Absolutely.
another thing too, when there's patterns going on, or maybe that's just like, the red and you keep finding the red, but something in that.
Oh, there's something in it, which is why I say,
Yeah.
please tell me about the wolves.
So there's a story of two wolves where there's a leader of a Cherokee tribe, and he's a Cherokee leader. And he is passing on wisdom to his grandson. And he's talking about this battle that goes on between two wolves. And there's a wolf of jealousy and anger and resentment and greed and envy and just like all these really intense negative thoughts and emotions. And then he says there's a story. There's a wolf of love and compassion and grace and kindness and empathy and joy and peace. And every day these wolves are going at it and they're at battle. And he just stopped, gave time to think. And the grandson's like, well, which wolf wins? And he says, the wolf you feed. So every day, which version of ourselves are we putting in those daily repetitions? Like, are we strengthening, or are we being pulled and distracted and bypassing and say, I'll do it later, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it when the time is right, I'll do it when I'm making more money, I'll do it when, and then you keep getting further and further away from yourself, or you're getting closer and closer and closer to yourself, to your true self. And that's like the befriending is like a relationship. Like this could be the end of us, which I don't see happening, or this could be just the beginning. And that comes down to the efforting, right? So like the check-ins, the connections, the like, everything's a decision, and which version gets strengthened.
A little while ago, you talked about, I think 95% of the time we're just running on autopilot. Subconscious. And there is a Rumi poem which starts with, out in the fields, there's like quiet, and I'll meet you there. It's the one that most people know, but the poem goes on for quite a few, I think they're called verses or sonnets. And one of the main phrases that's repeated is, don't go back to sleep. Don't go back to sleep. And the psychological, not the psychological way, but a psychological way of also looking at it is something called Systems 1, Systems 2 thinking. Whereas Systems 1 is our brain's desire to not have to use or expend much energy. So it learns and puts down a track, and then it runs the track. And that's the 95%. And then when you're learning something new, that's why sometimes we feel uncomfortable about learning new things, because we really have to use brain energy to do it. And we have to be really present and focused. And we have to do it step by step by step by step until we've built it enough that it turns into Systems 1 thinking. But when we go back, when we're looking to change, let me start there. When we're looking to grow and to change, we go into Systems 2 thinking. And that is where we have to be awake. Don't go back to sleep. And what I'm hearing here is, when you're feeding the two wolves, the way in which you currently live with your two wolves is already unconsciously System 1, 95% of the timing you. And if you would like to adjust who's feeding what at what time and how much, we're going to have to invite you into Systems 2 thinking. We're going to have to remind you that you need to be awake and attuned and able to shift your attention and do your body work, do your breath work, do your stretching, do your ice baths, do your gym, do your things that you find that allow you to shift the balance. I wonder what your most successful version of that is in your journey. Where have you been able to shift it where you've been awake, where you haven't been asleep? Do you have a story for us that might illustrate it?
Once you experience the truth, you can't go back to sleep. You can pretend for a little bit, but you can't go back to sleep. It just becomes you, and then you seek more. So there's a space of acceptance that has to happen. If you want to move the fastest way to do that is to accept it. That's how you make progress. There's been so many segments in my life that have awakened me at different levels. And I do believe, like, when I went through yoga teacher training, there was this one verse they're called yoga sutras. So each is called a thread, a verse, every different thing has their verbiage. But it was like, there was this one part where you're learning that, like, there was this, I don't remember all the names of the stories, but the concept is that he wanted to see everything all at once. So then the man's like, okay, open up my mouth and I'll show you everything. He opened up his mouth, he saw everything, and it backfired on him. So it's like, if you have the kundalini, which is the awakening of higher consciousness, and it's like a sleeping serpent. It's a sleeping serpent, which does reside in the root chakra, and you want it to move, so you kick it. It's gonna bite you. So if you try to awaken too fast for your timing, it could end up backfiring. And a lot of people will do that even through substance abuses, like the ayahuasca or the different like herbs and modalities, the psilocybin. And it has its properties and its placements. But when you're trying to force the awakening to happen on a timeline that is not meant for your timeline, it will backfire. And it became so overwhelming that, turned people into like little psychos and stuff like that. So to answer your question, I've had moments of revealing layers that I was ready and receptive for. And I believe that you climb and you need to integrate. That's the embodiment, is the integration, and then a next level, and then the integration, because if you get there too fast too soon, it will backfire. And what's the point of getting somewhere? It's like climbing a ladder and then dropping down, and majority of people live life in this yo-yo cycle, and I lived like it for a very long time. And then my goal was freedom. Through freedom is sustainability and stability, which still comes back to the root energy, the safe ground.
So we need to embody our transformations or our ability to awaken our next levels of self. And there is integration time. So it lives in the body and the beautiful brain and the nervous system and in your emotions and in your thinking and your physiology. And it's okay to step, recover, integrate, step, recover, integrate. That is the natural way of the unfolding.
It's the healthiest way. I wouldn't say it's natural. I would say it's healthy from my experience, because it doesn't feel natural.
What doesn't?
Change.
Oh, change. You have to befriend, don't you? You really have to get your friendship going with change. That can feel very threatening to us as humans, can't it?
It's so unnaturally feeling. It's probably one of the most unnatural feelings, but then it becomes normalized because you understand it. So I love how you have this art of breaking things down and recommunicating things, because people have to understand to remove the resistance.
Yes. There's some wisdom there. Now I'm going to take us somewhere as we start to wrap up. I'm going to take us to a porch. I make it fall with just the right temperature. You've got your cozies on. You've got your favorite drink. I often have more than one drink, so if you would like more than one, please bring a tray of whatever you would like. We've got great snacks, just the ones you've been waiting for. And we're in those Adirondack chairs, and I've just learned to say that word. And we are in a semicircle, and our listeners, our viewers are joining us. And this is our last time to talk with them before we recommence the next segment of our lives, because everything comes in segments and this is our time. And so I guess my question to you is, what is the last thing you'd like to share with the people that have joined us in these chairs, in their cozies, with their drinks and their snacks and their perfect outfit and comforting blankets? What do you want them to know?
That you were meant for an extraordinary life. But, however, you can have it all. First, you have to become an extraordinary human being. You have to become an extraordinary human being.
What is extraordinary? Does that mean I need to go to the Olympics and win a medal? Like, what? How do you? Not everyone can do that. How do?
Well,
I'm butting you.
this is where we're not to compare our standards to other people. So what does extraordinary mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And this also comes back into going inward and learning to go inward. And this is about the alignment, the tuning in of what extraordinary means for you. It's very personal, it's very intimate. And that's also something to understand, because the Olympians was their calling. And that's why they have achieved that level of success versus the other people where they were meant to go somewhere else. Life, I have the tree of life in my home as like one of my artworks. And I say, like, there's multiple paths to an end destination. And when you're in this exploration phase, it's okay to try different paths, but never change the goal until you've achieved it. When you achieve that, you have right knowledge. Knowledge cannot stem unless you give yourself an experience. It's like tasting a piece of fruit. How can you know if you like a mango or an apple if you've never tried either? And then even apples have their seasons and mangoes have their seasons. Right now it's apple season. Mango season's for the spring.
Yeah. And so what we get there is just one last translation of what I think you're saying. So correct me if I'm wrong, is that everybody has a heart print, and that extraordinary heart print belongs just to them and their context and their life and their job, their opportunity is to translate that by being a quester, by searching and questing for the answers to unlock who they are and what kind of life they'd like to create so their inside matches their outside. And sometimes that means that they're an Olympian, and sometimes that means something entirely different, and none are better and none are worse. All are extraordinary, and the invitation is to find your extraordinary.
I love it. And one thing too I want to add to that is that, God gives us a vision on purpose. What we do with it, the solar plexus, which is up the last energy system before the heart, which the heart is the first energy system to thrive because we've got survival and thriving energy systems. And when our solar plexus is about having free will. So when we're given a gift of a vision and a goal or an idea, what we do with it is up to us, whether we allow fear to weave its way or courage or faith or fear or, it's back to the two wolves, which one are you feeding every day? But when you have a vision, it's a gift. And when we're not utilizing our gifts, they're taken from us.
Are they though?
I believe so. I do believe so. And even in scripture, they say, when God gives us gifts and we're not utilizing them, he's just going to give them to somebody else. So we're not going to have that clarity anymore because clarity stems from action.
I believe that's true. This is not a waggy at you finger. This is my thinking finger.
Yeah, I know. This would be a wagging one, but this is like a little vortex finger.
My thinking one.
That's her wand.
So here's what I'm thinking. I feel like maybe ideas could go somewhere else, like Elizabeth Gilbert's big magic thing, where you have the idea, and if you don't do something with it, that might go to somebody else because the idea needs to be here.
Don't you think, though, the same idea goes to so many people, but it's the ones that do something with it are the ones that are then credited for it?
Sure. I want to go to the gifts, though, because I don't feel like you can lose what is yours. Maybe it just takes you a while to unlock it. I just don't feel like you can't lose what belongs to you.
Let me correct that because you are bringing up, I think the charge of it gets dissipated.
Yeah, let's do that.
So the charge, it's like if, for example, I'll come back to working out because it's a physical, but you work out, you get
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
You stop, you get weak.
Yes.
Or maybe you've never worked out, but you still have the ability. Like a lot of people think like when we age that you can't put on the same amount of muscle mass as the same speed as somebody in their 20s versus their 80s, but studies have shown that you absolutely can.
Oh, I like that.
It's just the elasticity when you get hurt takes longer.
Okay.
So I would compare it to that if you're not using it, that the strength dissipates.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
We don't have to agree here, but I feel like we normally would. And so that feels really nice.
I want to like high five you right now.
Yeah,
like
let's do it. I'm scared of the mic. Let's do that properly. All right, friends, I could talk all day, and obviously I am, but I have a little gift here, and it's a surprise. You haven't seen it before. She did see it.
My gift is attention to detail. So I see little things.
Yeah, same. So I just came from a live event with my beautiful women. We were in Kansas City and we gave up something painful and we sent it back into the elements, earth, fire, water. And we remembered that experience so we could take the memory from it. And we embodied this into a tree, Jasper, which is a tumble stone. And I wanted to give you this for your wisdom because of all that you have earned so far and how willingly you shared that with us. And I just want this as an acknowledgement of all that you have overcome and all that you have known and all that you have shared. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. This reminds me of, I recently had an epiphany on this. I want to share this, is that, when we receive gifts, when we don't know when to let them go, they can become curses.
Yes.
And so that every season has a blessing, and then we want to bless that blessing to somebody else when it's time to let it go, so it doesn't become a burden.
Yeah, otherwise we have too many leaves in our canopy, and then the sun can't get through.
Yeah.
Because we just did an event called Regenerate, and it was all about trees,
so
and we did a
beautiful.
segment on too many leaves.
Yeah.
So if you don't let things go, then the things that live in the branches can't get access to sunlight or air. There's no room for the fruit to grow or the flowers to bloom. The things on the ground don't get what they need. Everything in balance. Is a season of letting go, and there's a season of growing new things.
Well, thank you. I gratefully receive this blessing.
Yes. And we gratefully receive this blessing of having you in our ears on Wisdom Stripes. Thank you so much for being here. What a joy it was, Tanya.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Follow me on @MegTuoheyOfficial and leave a comment and review. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next time on Wisdom Stripes.